Sup?
Sup, cunts.
Hey, that's my line. Sup, buckers. Hey, that's my line. Sup, buckers. Oh shit, I forgot my line. Sup, buckers. No, it ain't. Fuck that guy.
I know. It's a joke. Sorry, I
So
tried
is
to
mine.
be funny.
So is mine. That's why I'm like, no, it ain't. Fuck that guy.
Keep forgetting I have.
That's horrible.
What you mean beautiful? All I see is four ugly mugs.
I'm so fat. Oh.
Quick, everybody, do your mugshot pose.
Straight up.
No smiling in the mugshots. No smiling in the mugshots. Eyes forward. Neutral expression.
My number one rule is to never have a mugshot.
No. That said, I have been fingerprinted before.
Same. And so is Jay.
I have been too. They have it.
As a child, I grew up in a community that our schools were on a highway, essentially. So it's the Trans-Canada Highway. So they were like, anybody could just stop and grab a kid from the playground and keep driving, and we'd barely fucking know. So maybe we should put some fingerprints on these kids, so if they ever wind up dead in a ditch, we know who they are. And I'm like,
yep.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like the DNA kits. It's the DNA kits kids have in their lockers now, so that if their bodies are so massacred, their parents can still identify their remains.
Watch this shit.
No.
You see this controller I have? Jay, you see this PlayStation controller I have? Watch this.
I need a pillow. I need a pillow, Scott.
And you can just replace them. Yeah. It's the PlayStation Edge controller. They've started building accessibility into them for fucking like $200. They have additional back paddles so that people who have like, if you have your thumb on this button here, you can't exactly take your thumb off and hit these buttons here without playing claw, which requires you to have your thumb here and have your index finger hit this. Not everybody wants to play claw, so in the interest of being able to jump and shoot and do shit, you have your back paddles. And they made them modular because the number one thing that wrecks a controller is stick drift. So often you'll have one stick start to drift and then the entire controller is fucked up because of it. And now if my right controller stick is bad, I just pull that one out and I can buy a new one, plug the new fucker in, boop, boop, and that's it. You don't want to know. Like,
oh, I do want to know because
almost $300.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Let me see how much it cost in Canadian. Sadly.
Started to learn how to make iced tea this week, like my ancestors would.
Bad.
And I spilled iced tea on my PlayStation 5 controller, which then I have now sold for $15 on eBay.
Okay, so they started.
God, that sucks.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. It was the secondary one. We still have one.
Okay.
So the DualSense,
but it was the red
Edge,
one. Favorite.
The DualSense Edge controller is $260 Canadian, which means it's closer to $200 American.
Oh, that's even more reasonable.
Well, because that's the thing I always have to tell people is that you don't ever take the Canadian price because we have like monopoly money by comparison to y'all.
I've never understood that.
It's just currency. That's a whole thing.
Right.
But anyways, what I was getting at is I tell people like, oh yeah, it only costs like this much, and they like shit their pants, and I'm like, it's Canadian, and they're like, well, it can't be that much less expensive, and then they look it up and they're like, it's like only $200, and I'm like, yeah, I told you, and they're like, well, what the fuck? And I'm like, I told you, it's Canadian.
People also don't understand.
I mean, a lot of places
Or
use
Australian.
dollars. Australia uses dollars. Doesn't have to be a
that's the
pound or
end
a
of that.
euro to be a different currency set up.
And the pound is worthless now. Thank you, Brexit. Extra applause because it's a Toyota. We stand Toyotas in this house.
If there's one thing I know, it's how to take care of myself IRL. And for those who don't know, Toyota has the best market retention value of any car that you can purchase, meaning it depreciates less than everything else on the market. There is an exception. You have to keep it to manufacturer original specifications. It's called MOS. But if you keep it MOS, well, there's certain things you can do. For example, I told the guy I wanted to paint it. He's like, don't. If you do that, you're going to fuck up your MOS and its value. Put a vinyl wrap on it because it's not a modification. It's actually a protective wrap because then it protects the paint underneath it. So I'm going to pink Barbie vinyl wrap my Prius. Yeah, of course. And it won't even make its value go down. It'll actually help keep it because the original paint, which is what you want, is protected by a layer of vinyl. So like if that vinyl really gets rat bagged, or like maybe the tree at my house comes on it one too many times, I can take the vinyl off and the MOS is still underneath there, right? So yeah, they're really good cars. I could turn around and sell this fucker in 5 years, and I'd probably only lose $7,000 worth of value on it in the whole time, right? Like they're that good, right? And that's $7,000 Canadian, right? So, for example, like I got into a car crash with a 2009 car, like 8 years later, and I got like more than the market value for it in insurance payout because of how good insurance treats Toyotas, because they don't fucking degrade their value, right? So if it's MOS and you've been treating it good, you didn't throw your money away, which you would do on like a Chevrolet, So yeah. When they break down, the advantage to a Chevy and a Ford, I'll say this, as somebody who's owned and like serviced a lot of vehicles, you got replacement parts out the ass. Ford F-150, you could throw a baseball and hit a scrapyard that can supply you that fucker, right?
So I was just gonna say, my car is a 2012 Toyota, obviously RAV4, just your base edition.
I was gonna say Corolla, but yeah.
No, RAV4, honey. I got an SUV. I do package delivery. My little SUV. Has the moonroof. First car I ever had that had Bluetooth. Actually, no, I had a Chevy that had Bluetooth before, but I totaled that quickly. But it had Bluetooth. And when I purchased it from my mother, because technically my mother owned the car, she charged me $16,000, which I paid off over the course of like 6 years. And right now my car has $112,000. I have paid off that $16,000 to my mother. So it's mine free and clear to do what I wish. If I would to go, Toyota now has pure electrics, BZ4X. sponsor. I want that car. But like
Um,
hopefully in 5 years it'll be even better. I know electric, they'll blow up, whatever.
well, it's less that. It's less the blow up, and it's more not having the proper infrastructure for it. And actually, the big one to blame on that is Tesla, because of their proprietary charging systems. You could have had everything be fucking universal, but we can blame Tesla for the lack of adaptation on EV currently. Just saying. Anyways, please continue.
Oh yes, most definitely. And I honestly, I have noticed just in the past 4 years of me living in Metro Philadelphia, where most people don't have garage parking. Most people have to park on the street. And I
Or
have
driveway.
seen more Tesla or driveway. Yeah, no driveways. Like just street parking only, and not Teslas. Like the Chevy Leaf. And I've seen an outcropping. I've even seen Rivians, which are they are luxury EVs. They cost more than Teslas. And I see these roaming the ratty ass streets of Philly. And I'm like, But yeah, Toyota coming out with an electric model. I'll probably get that in 5 years. And I'm gonna wrap it in witches betwixt sigils. Did you hear me? Sigils. And it's just gonna be branding for the podcast, and I'm gonna drive around, and it's gonna be wonderful. No emissions.
I apologize
I
for the
know I
first
just
11 minutes of this
shit-talked-
stream. No one's been able to hear me because Streamlabs wasn't picking up my mic because apparently the input just wasn't there.
Ah.
So hello everyone, I do exist and I'm not a mute. Thank you. Continue, Sophia.
So I apologize for what I'm about to do, but I know I just shit talked. I know I just shit talked Chevys, but Chevy actually has a new EV coming out that is pretty good. It's the I want to say it's the Cobalt, but I know it's not.
Spark.
Well, their
It's like the
EV is the Leaf.
That's
no, there was a
Nissan.
different
The
one
current
too.
EV.
They had
I
a
don't
different one.
You're right, though. They are releasing a new one, which did look very. I love Chevys. That was the car I had before my
no,
Toyota.
there's Chevy Spark and Nissan Leaf.
Let me just do a quick. Let me do a quick review.
And
yeah,
they
I think
all
it was
look
the
like
Spark.
toys.
The Spark is the exact. Yep, it was the Spark that I was thinking of. No. It was the Chevy Bolt. Yeah,
Oh,
the
Volt,
Chevy Bolt.
Volt, yeah.
Yeah, and
That's
it's outselling almost every other GM model in Canada right now because of how popular they are. I was actually considering getting one, but film makes it a little difficult because we drive outside of the range of a lot of EV setup stuff.
Right, yeah.
So it wouldn't be able to.
I really want
Oh gosh.
an electric bike. That's where I'm at.
Yes.
I hate cars.
Yes.
Like, it's so funny with me. Like, cars are interesting. Like, I'll remember, like, models of cars. You know, like, I'll remember the emblems and, like, which car is which and models and stuff. I don't know anything about them. I just remember, like, oh, that's a Nissan, whatever. That's a this, and that emblem means that. Like, I'll remember those associations. And I like racing video games, but that's, like, where my interest in cars stops. Like, it's just purely, like, yeah, that's it.
Look, I like having.
At how
Sorry, go ahead.
I like mine is just like so like I have cars that I like, right? But like mine are purely aesthetic. Like I just pulled it up on my computer. There's a company called Lunaz, and they're a London-based company. And Lunaz, firstly, they're much better than Tesla. They're electric, all electric. But the cool thing about Lunaz is what they do is they take vintage like cars, like the vintage Bentley, which is what I want really bad. It's essentially an electric Bentley. You know, if you ever watch like your old European movies and stuff like that, or even like the old Exorcist movies, for some reason they always drive up in a black Bentley. Don't know why. But
I'd never drive it. I'd be so scared.
That prestigious.
Right.
I know, but it would be so nice.
It's a car that you keep in the garage.
Like pulling up to, you know, like the hospital or my practice and like a beautiful black Bentley.
Electric black Bentley.
Fully electric, you know, fully modernized vintage Bentley.
I do go for luxury over like sport muscle car. I love luxury all the way. Yeah.
My grandfather had a Lincoln. It was an older model, so it wasn't like electric or anything. But number one, he had it for years, and this thing was like the smoothest thing I've ever ridden in. Like you could just fall right to sleep. Like you didn't feel bumps. It just like glided
Lincoln Town
over
car.
everything.
Probably Lincoln Town car.
Yep. It was beautiful. Beautiful.
Okay, so don't treat me like I'm bragging for this because I'm not proud of it, okay? But
All good.
my dad likes to buy fancy cars with his money.
That's his thing.
He's driving a Denali SUV right now.
Wow.
It has like a
Baby.
fucking heads-up display on it, and
Wow.
I interrupted him
spaceship.
when he was talking about it. He's like, "Oh yeah, it's got this thing where it displays critical information on the windshield." I'm like, "Oh yeah, heads-up display." And he's like, "Will you let me finish?" He's like, "Well, where the fuck you hear that?" I'm like, "Video games. They've been using it for ages." And he's like, "All right."
Whatever.
But he was like trying to impress me with like, "Oh, this the heads-up display, right?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, it's odd."
He's like, whatever. Let me have
But it's-
this.
Yeah, let me enjoy my expensive ass vehicle with like my magnetic suspension. To be fair, if you drive constantly like he does for a living, magnetic suspension makes a big fucking difference in the smoothness of your ride and shit.
Sounds fancy.
And like I don't care about cars, if I'm being really honest. The reason I got a Prius is I didn't want to spend a lot of money on gas. That's the whole fucking reason.
Absolutely.
Right?
If you can't go electric,
if I
hybrid's the way to
could've-
go.
And if I could have, it would have been a fucking standard transmission. And everybody looks at me and goes, "Are you insane?" And
I mean,
go,
like stick.
"I prefer to drive standard." And they're like, "But you live in the city." And I'm like, "Yes." And then they're like, "What the fuck?"
It is. I've heard driving stick is better for your gas mileage.
It's so much better. It's better for your gas mileage. It's better for your vehicle transmission. It's better for your cost of like your parts to replace and repair. It's better for your driving experience because once you actually know how to apply the clutch, like you can accelerate at such a targeted amount and like do the exact type of transition that you need to. And like when you don't have a standard, the only way to slow down your vehicle is to hit the brakes, right?
Why do I like picture you doing some like Fast and the Furious bullshit in a fucking Prius? Like, like you find like this big open road and you're like, watch me.
You know people race
drift
Priuses,
in this
right?
Prius.
Oh,
I
yeah.
believe it. I believe
Hold
it.
up though, Jay. People okay, so like
Are you
actually,
gonna
for
join
those
the
who don't know,
underground
Priuses-
Prius racing league?
No.
Why
but allow me
not?
to explain. Priuses are actually really good for racing because the batteries are in the floorboards, which gives them a stupendous center of gravity, right? Everything, the weight's in the bottom, it like hugs the fucking road, right?
Mhm.
And because it's an electronic vehicle or it's a hybrid, it's got that electronic vehicle drive system, the engine doesn't need to kick in until it gets above a certain speed. So the engine is like always in prime condition. You know what I mean? Like the thing is just so fucking smart that like once the engine kicks in, it just goes, and you don't have to do that like throttle up and build in thing because like the electronic systems will do that. So like the dealer was describing to me how like people actually fucking race what's it called, Priuses, because they have that really good doobly doo. Yeah, with the not driving your gas engine first. I'm not a car salesman, you know, but
I just really want you to join an underground Prius racing league. Can you do that for me? So I can live vicariously through you.
No, because I've been in enough car accidents to know better. Like there's a quote from the Snot Nosed Rez Kids song. It's big dog bully mode. We don't need to swerve because we drive slow. And I'm like, fuck, I feel that, man.
Mm-hmm.
We just take her easy. If something's in the road, you fucking slow down. You don't need to swerve. You can stop, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot to be said about actually driving a little bit more chill and taking care of yourself. But anyways, let's not talk all episode about cars. I don't think people
I
come
know.
here for
People are like, I'm
dogs.
tuned out. Because like half our listeners are like, I don't drive. Or I don't. Because we were talking about that too, kind of off air. Like, those that need to drive and be driven. I don't drive.
I don't drive
I have my
either.
license.
I'm too poor.
Yeah.
No, that's the thing. Is normally it's a cost thing, right? Like most people in our generation, let's bring it back to capitalism, can't even afford our own fucking places, let alone fucking having cars and shit, right?
That's the thing. It's like those basic things, I guess, that sort of like maybe the generations before us kind of took for granted was like, when you're 16, you get a car. Really? Wow. When did that happen?
For real.
That's such. I always feel like that whole thing was like very like movies. Like,
Yeah.
and I don't mean to say it was only that, but like the thing is, it's like, and I'm not trying to like call out my cousins. I love my cousins, but they've lived well
Yeah.
for a long time, and that was their experience. But when you live in Jersey and every time that there was a new MacBook, you got the newest one, whether
Yeah.
it was broken or not. The new iPhone, you got the newest one regardless. And you had the money to always just pay for it outright. And every summer you went to the beach, and you maybe got to go to London, or you went to Italy, or you went to France, or whatever. Like, yeah, good for you. But the vast
Yeah.
majority of us, I'm not again, I'm not trying to shit on my family. If any of
Yeah.
you ever hear this, which I doubt you do, I love you. But like,
I love you, but I'm slightly bitter. Anyway.
but the fact of the matter is that their experience isn't the average experience.
Right.
So, like even if for a parent to even be able to afford you a car,
Mm-hmm.
that's not average.
That generational wealth doesn't really
Mhm.
translate, especially like growing up in Philly. Philly's not a very
Yep.
The divide is very wide. It's a very wide gap. The evidence of a middle class it's shrinking, every day, as we can see
Yeah.
just from in this city, and I'm sure that's mirrored everywhere else in the country, if not the world. So shit is
It's
rough.
yeah, I mean, but even
Like
Philly itself is really weird. I'm sorry, again.
like when I saw Sophia, like truly, like when I saw you post a picture of that car on Facebook, I was like, fucking right. Like that's like a rite of passage, but not like in the sense of like you're 16 and you got a car, like rite of passage. I'm like, no, like you fucking worked for it, and like having a car is such it gives you a lot of independence that you may not have, without, because especially because in the US,
Yeah,
and
it
I think
does.
the same is also true of Canada, like things are spread out. Like it's a very large piece of land that we are in. And so it's far
It's actually
distances to
more
get to
so in Canada
places.
because we have a
Population,
much lower
larger
population
area.
density, and we
Mhm.
have a larger space, which means we have less infrastructure. So I
Right.
can't just take a bus across Canada, right?
Right.
That kind of shit doesn't exist anymore. We used to have like Greyhound way back in the day, but that shut down a while ago because of like
Wasn't
operating
enough.
costs.
Yeah.
Yeah, there wasn't
And
enough people taking it. Also, y'all hearing that thunderstorm? Damn.
no, I have not. I am not hearing a
Yeah,
thunderstorm. But having a car is very freeing, and I realized too, just like with
That's what I was. Thank you for.
Hmm.
Sorry, and then I cut you off.
No, it's fine. What are you gonna say?
As a car owner, and as someone who is unemployed, and a car in America or North America especially is a lifeline. It's a job. It's a home. You can sleep in it. You can live in it. Yes, it's everything. Like if I didn't have anything else, I'd at least have my car.
Right.
And that's a huge thing, and it's just like a child. It's something that you have to care for, it's something that you have to maintain, it's something that you have to keep clean, and it becomes a part of your life. And my car is a part of my very limited family at this point.
And
I
also,
love her dearly.
I do like. I guess just because we're talking about cars, I'm not gonna make the whole episode about cars, but
Just wanted to
for
say it's
instance,
my
like I
five.
know there's a lot of there, especially in the queer community, there's a lot of us that don't drive just out of choice. Maybe we just don't want to, don't like it. I particularly don't enjoy driving. It's not fun to me. And also, I love that my friend Jim, and I know I compare myself to him, and I shouldn't, but like we have a lot of similarities. He doesn't drive either, so his husband does all the driving. And it really just comes down to he's like, there's nothing wrong with him, you know. He's not like less of a person. He's just like, I just really don't like driving. I just have no fucking interest. Too nervous. And that's kind of where I am with it. But I will drive out of necessity. I do have my license. I did finally get that. But I just wanted to throw that out there to anyone who's like, who struggles with that kind of thing. Like, just because you don't drive either by choice or because you can't or whatever, it doesn't make you less of a person. It's just, unfortunately, it's really shitty that like we don't put a lot of money into public transit and infrastructure and shit in America. And if you live in America, I guess I could speak to that. I don't really know how Canadian. Well, Sophia kind of shed some light on that. Hard to get cross country, you know, at the very least. So, but just you're not less of a person if you don't drive or don't have a car. That's all. That's all I was want to say.
To speak up because I'm unmuted. Sorry, I had to do some stuff. A thunderstorm just rolled in.
Okay.
In Canada, transit issues are magnified, right?
Yeah.
Because we don't have a lot of public service transportation. Like, you can't get between cities without a car, or somebody driving you. In like my home province, British Columbia now, right? Because they got rid of the Greyhound bus services, right? And if you're in a small town, your options are you're going to cycle somewhere, you're going to get an alternative vehicle like a scooter, you're going to get a car, or you're going to walk, or you're going to get somebody to give you a ride, right? Like, there's no public transit in smaller towns, right? So like, a big problem up here, I'm sure y'all have heard of missing and murdered Indigenous women, right?
Yes.
Of course.
A lot of shit happens because people are in isolated communities. They don't necessarily have the transportation to get out of there. They try and leave a situation they don't want to be in. They hitchhike somewhere. The wrong person picks them up and they're never seen again, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a real fucking issue up here, actually. The lack of safe public transportation outside of motor vehicles gets a lot of people killed.
But like, I don't know. It just seems so silly, right? That like we live in this glorious age of tech, right? Like tech is just like our technology is exploding at a crazy rate, you know? And like we still haven't like why I just don't understand why we collectively don't dump more money into infrastructure and transportation. The only reason I could think of is it doesn't make them money, you know, it just doesn't make them money, so they don't care.
Rich people want that shit privatized.
Yeah,
because
they're trying to do it
privatizing
here.
public services is how they make the most money, right? So that's why we don't have those simple things taken care of. Because if there's a lack thereof, then it can be something that people can pay for with wealth to get an advantage over other people. And they are all about making sure the game is rigged so those who have more money get an unfair advantage. So they never have to be underadvantaged ever for any of their descendants for all of time. That's their plan. They essentially, to quote a friend, with what he was describing he wanted, they want an unfair advantage forever. That's what it is.
Yeah. And I do think that we are having a cultural shift. We are seeing that cultural shift of people who are waking up and realizing that, oh, they really do want an unfair advantage all the time, forever and ever and ever. And I definitely think the leveling of the scales is going to happen. And I think that's kind of like, I think that's our place now, is to spread that message and get people to understand. That is what needs to happen. We need to come together as us first. We all need to get
General
on the same
strike
page.
2023. I'm telling you, once the Teamsters and IATSE start striking, you're going to have the WGA, you're going to have the SAG-AFTRA, and then you're going to have the Teamsters striking, right? Well, have the Teamsters officially striked?
The Teamsters haven't. SAG.
That's what I'm saying.
SAG has. So the Actors Guild.
Teamsters, yes, of course, I know. My work was impacted by it. But what I'm getting at is once the Teamsters strike hits, there's enough momentum built to push for a general strike.
I would agree, yeah, because that's going to affect a large portion of just, you know, logistics and stuff.
The Teamsters strike is massive. The Teamsters strike affects like all of UPS, like transportation. People who don't know what Teamsters are, they're essentially the union for people who do transportation and logistics, right?
The moving of
That's a
things.
lot of shit that relies on that. That's a lot of your shit that relies on that.
Yeah, because and I definitely know that there's a disconnect for a lot of people. Like they just all they know is they walk into the store and the thing is there, you know, or I click the button and the thing arrives at my house a couple days later. There's so many moving pieces and so many people involved in between the click of that button and that thing showing up at your doorstep. And I think that's something that like that we really need to understand and drive home. Someone delivers that package, someone processes that order, like it's all, and they're all not getting paid enough to do it, and they're all getting treated shittily to do it, and the only reason they're doing it is the reason why you're working your shitty job, and why you're working your shitty job is just to fucking stay alive, you know, it's just to exist
Are
within
y'all
the
hearing
system.
that thunder?
No, I can't really hear it. So that's actually good that your
Nope,
mic
can't
isn't
hear it at
picking it
all.
up,
Mm-hmm.
which is good. But yeah, my thoughts on that. I would say though, like sometimes I get really wrapped up in the problems of the world. Like I sit here and I'm like, oh my god, we really like I shouldn't be reporting to work. I should be organizing a general strike. You know, I'm like, but no one's gonna fucking listen to me, you know? Like who am I in the grand scheme of things?
It's actually funny.
Hmm.
It's funny that you talk about that, Jay, because sometimes as I think everyone knows by now, I watch a lot of queer cinema,
Hmm.
and I was just watching. There was a movie that came out, I think, in 2017. It was called Pride, and it's a London-based movie, and it's a historical recounting of something that actually happened, which was um, the way that queer people in London, etc., got their rights kind of written into law was actually due to work that queer people did to fight for miners and the mining unions in London. And even though their fight inevitably lost due to kind of consistent homophobia, this idea that minors were being helped by the queers, that really,
God
hurt them
forbid.
overall. But
Right.
what ended up happening was what ended up happening was shortly after their loss, about like the following year, the miners showed up for Gay Pride in London and marched in the Pride March.
That's awesome.
And because the unions joined up with us, because they had this belief that when one group fights for another, you stand together in your fight. It's not my fight, your fight, it's our fight.
Yes.
And they march
Yes.
together collectively. And by doing that, they actually got uh, they started having rights written into laws in London and in the UK. So that I thought, it's funny because to go on with this story, I always get this kind of unfortunately, I get this sort of this raw sort of rage that comes up when I learn about our history globally or even locally, what have you. I just get very angry, and it didn't help because before we started recording today, unfortunately my YouTube algorithm is a little strange, and it fed me this conservative walk away, trans guy, and I was like, how is this a thing? And he's an influencer, and like he has on people like Buck Angel and that one lesbian who doesn't like trans people, I forget her name. Patudo,
Oh,
whatever
her,
her name
yeah.
is.
Whatever her issue is.
And and I was furious, and this whole time I'm like, my mom actually goes, she goes, what's wrong? And I go, I'm trying not to fight with somebody online because I want to tell him off so bad about how stupid and ignorant and but I get this like this rage to like do something, to rage against,
We spend a lot of energy fighting, and whether that's fighting people online that,
which doesn't help, and that's
right.
why, right.
Yes. So like we're fighting the conservatives, right? So like the more that you comment on their posts, the more that you're like, you're a piece of shit for saying all this shit, and you're like, you're
Right.
just giving them views and you're feeding the algorithm in their favor. And if you
Yep.
literally fucking downvote, ignore them into the bowels of algorithm hell, you won't see them because no one's paying attention. But the problem is that we can't resist a good fight. I don't say like we, but like a lot of us can't resist a good fight. I used to
A
be a
lot of people
keyboard
are
warrior a
addicted to
little bit.
arguing with strangers on the internet.
I used to think it would help. I used to think like maybe what I say will help change this person's mind. And guess what? It never fucking does.
You know,
it just
you can change minds of people online, but the type of individual is a very specific kind, right?
And I don't think it's
They're
going to be accomplished
usually
through a
somebody
comment
who's
on
open
something.
to hearing stuff and willing to grow and develop as a person.
Yes.
And
They're
it's
out
almost
there.
never somebody who is directly ideologically opposed to you. So, for example, there's this one person I know who at the time was a closeted trans woman. She's now out, right? She had some like low-key racist sentiment. And it was because of something that had happened to her and views from her family because she was from Texas, right? I pointed out the bias to her, and because she wasn't like trying to be a bad person, she's not like ideologically opposed, she could recognize it immediately and correct it, right? And then she never committed that fucking problem again, right? And it's like that simple because she's not like intrinsically committed to being a bad person.
Right.
And that's kind of the thing that goes on with arguing online where it feels so futile is we get into these arguments with these people who dehumanize us because they're the ones who we feel like we have to respond to the most to prove wrong, right?
It's not those people.
I
It's
found
the
a
people
different
that are on the
solution.
fence.
No, I found a different solution for those people and I love it. Do you want to hear it? I spit in their face. So like I commented on a status, because like they're on a thing and people were talking about getting banned from Tinder, right? I got banned from Tinder for being trans actually, and I didn't know this had happened. And I commented, this is my comment, right? I got banned from Tinder for being trans. I didn't know this had happened until I emailed Tinder staff to ask why I had been shadow banned, right?
Right.
I didn't realize what had happened until I got an email response back saying, "We apologize for this. Tinder is gender inclusive and we do not discriminate against people based on their gender identity." And I stopped and I was reading it and I was confused and I was like, oh, they reported me for being trans and I got auto flagged, right? So I commented this, and of course, some shitty guys come in there to say, "No, you're not a woman, you're a man who's delusional, and I will report you every single time," right? So, what I did is I DM'd this guy and I said, "Yeah, really? Your fucking problem is that you're obsessed with trans women because guys like you are actually really into us and can't stop watching porn about us. And then you seek us out in public comment sections to shame us because of your own associated guilt. You either want to be one of us or you can't stop fucking thinking about us and it makes you feel bad. So source your own shit because you're the one who has issues because you came to me, not the other way around, fuck boy." And then I block them. And I throw all of their shit in their face and I don't give them an avenue to respond and they implode. And it's fucking beautiful. It is the only way to deal with them. You just throw their shit in their face as rudely as possible and walk away because it's the internet. And if they really are that tough and they say that shit in person, you just knock them the fuck out. Period. End.
Just that reminds me a lot of there's another meme that was going around for a while there, but so many straight cis white guys particularly got really pissed, and essentially it's like the only demons that most straight cis men are fighting is bisexuality.
Yeah.
And they got big mad, and I was like, "You're only getting big mad because it's big true."
I know, right?
It is. We went down to Clark Park this morning to measure spots for Pagan Pride, and our friends Lex and Vincent met up with us. We were actually talking about this exact same thing earlier today. And it was just kind of like this sense of like, especially when it's family or people that you kind of like associate with or whatever. And if they just keep saying these things like, you know, just othering comments, I can't stand when it's like people are more worried about what's in my pants than what I am. Like everyone's more worried. Like it's utterly fucking stupid, and it's like almost comical. Like when you watch them kind of struggle with their own fucking thought patterns. But that's where I'm like, you have to you just don't fucking talk to them anymore. Just don't fucking associate. Like, okay, my uncle said some fucking transphobic thing. Well, guess what? You're fucking out. Don't fucking talk to me. I ain't gonna do shit for you. Fuck off.
Get out of my life, bitch.
You have that power.
Yeah,
If you're a minor, I'm sorry, and I know there's a lot of wibbly wobbly bullshit family fuckery that happens, and I am sorry if you are one of those dealing with that. One day you will be an adult, and you will have the authority and the bodily autonomy to do whatever the fuck you want. And whatever the fuck you need to do.
You'll be able to say, I'm not going to Christmas dinner because this. And you can sit down on the couch and say, I'll see you Christmas morning. I love you all. Have a fun time.
And
And if they get mad at you, that's a big them problem.
Yes.
Right.
Because it's all about self-preservation. And especially for being a queer person, sometimes being around family is just not easy. Or just being in a social space is just not easy. It's just not. Because I was at a family thing, and one of my family members, came to me and was like, I accept you, like, no matter what, and I accept everything about you. And I'm like, I didn't even fucking mention this.
Shut the fuck up.
I didn't even fucking mention this. You're the one who's laying it on thick. You never fucking call me. You never fucking text me. And now we're at this thing, and you're like, I accept you. I love you. Okay, great. Good. Do you want a medal? Do you want me to proclaim it to the fucking stars? Congratulations, you're not a piece of shit.
I'll never forget. I don't mean to talk shit about my family, but I will.
Just don't name names.
Do it. They're not gonna watch this anyways.
I have a distant cousin who got married, and this particular cousin of mine, different cousins that I was talking about earlier, by the way, though equally well off. His parents, they love Tucker Carlson. Love him. Like they get excited to listen to him, and I'm like, I mean, now I have other reasons for not liking
I'm sorry,
these people, and
excuse
I'm
me.
not gonna go full in depth.
Welcome to the party.
Oh, I know. And
red flag.
I know. I have a lot of reasons, other reasons for not liking these people, but I remember when my cousin was getting married, and everyone was like, "You really should come. He's family." And I was like, I don't think he's like that. I think my cousin's a bit, because he's younger, right, than his parents, obviously, and he kind of is. He's a bit of a centrist, I guess, but
with
that's neither here nor there.
With younger generations, they tend to be more tolerant.
I was kind of like, I'm not really interested in being around them.
Right.
I know, and people are like, well, and of course you have the older generation who's like, they're older and they don't know, and it's like, well, you could just be around them, you don't got to talk to them. And I was like, I don't want to be associated with them. Like, I don't want them near me. I don't want them like giving me these weird hellos that they don't mean. I don't want to exchange pleasantries. I don't have anything nice to say. If I open my mouth, I'm going to tell them about themselves, and then I'm the problem.
Right.
And I'm just the
Why'd you
crazy
have to make
queer,
it about you?
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'd rather just sit at home. Now the good thing is that my mother agrees. So, and as does my Aunt Jean, my mom's second oldest sister. Her kids also agree.
There you go.
We're pretty much all like, that side. Like one time, my cousin Cody, he had to lay into them. He had to go. I don't remember the context in full, but now my cousin Cody, none of you know this, but he's a very soft-spoken guy, and he doesn't argue with anybody. He can get along with a freaking rock. And
for him to be,
he turned around to them and goes, "I get it. I'm not white," because he's Filipino. And he's like, "I get it. I'm
Just
not white."
fucking
And he walked
slap
out.
them in the face with it. I love it.
Yeah.
Just break their fucking shit in front of them to them, and they have nothing they can do about it.
And he walked out. And for my cousin Cody to do that, that
It's
was
pretty,
like, I mean, now I didn't get to witness that, although I would have loved every second of it, because it would have just been glorious to watch them fall apart, the other ones. But I was so proud of him hearing about it. So I was like, "Oh, I love you."
That's amazing.
It was. I know. And the best part is just like no one's gonna argue with him, because he's like all like, he lifts and everything. So like, what are you gonna do? He's an ass. He's like,
At least he's like imposing too, like on like physically imposing too, like on top of.
Yeah, he got that the island blood, so he's massive. And
I'm gonna say this to all my queers: I love y'all, but if you lift, stretch too. Just saying.
That too.
Always stretch.
Yep. I'm sure your cousin Cody does, because is Cody queer?
No, he's not.
Okay. I was gonna say queers know all about stretching, but I redact that then.
I am a queer who does not stretch. I don't stretch. My body doesn't.
But we know about it. You either choose to not do it.
True. I am aware of it.
I mean, I have to be careful what I say because I'm here in front of my mom, but stretching in all sorts of different ways for a long time.
Yep. That's
always be
the
stretching.
exact reference I'm making.
I also work out now too, so I stretch my body as well.
It's the only way to be.
I was so excited.
Also,
just
I am
now.
so fucking proud of you for getting into that.
Thank you.
That's right. That's another thing that you're doing now, Scott. You're working with a personal trainer.
Yes, I am.
Scott, I have an egregore for you, because I swear to God, you have been on this train the whole time. I can tell you about it afterwards. But he is the compassionate warrior who did not separate himself from the village, who takes the time to teach people and is not the begrudging dickhead on top of the mountain who thinks he's better than everybody. You know what I mean?
I really am very curious, please, because I like that. It's actually really funny because, with the gym, where my gym is, I don't know what's up with it. It's just it's behind this plaza here in South Philly, and when I go back there, there's something in the land over there, and I'm I didn't expect there to be something here. But I think because it was so lonesome for so long, and then they started putting things back there.
Is it a squonk?
No, I wish it was a squonk. I would be like, so I'm gonna build a house for you in my home,
and I will pay, and I'm its mother now.
But there's definitely something going on there, and it's funny because one of the things I keep wanting to do, I want to get sticker paper and write a sigil and stick it somewhere in the gym, so that way I can keep a whether it be an egregore or a particular god or deity of gymnasiums and fitness, Hermes or Hercules, or even again an egregore would have.
I was just gonna say, isn't that Hercules?
You know what?
Yeah,
I will talk
reminds
about
me of Hercules.
The egregores here then. So one thing I'm actually really excited about that we've been doing in DKMU right now is the Wizards Moot. I don't know if any of y'all are in the server or you've seen that. But the Wizards Moot is something that that they came up with in 2020. This is while I was on the street protesting. It was essentially a way to gamify the egregores, because okay, the alarm's gone.
Yeah, it was like that. I heard that.
Egregores can be a little difficult to spin up to give themselves a really good sense of coherence. So we found a way to gamify it, and it was to essentially make teams. We make 3 teams, and they're all based around one of the egregores from the God Form cycle. and you pick one of the teams, and then you work with that egregore for an extended time period, and you learn the lessons associated with it, and you do rites and workings devoted to them. And not only does it like give a lot of positive engagement because it encourages people to like pick a magical working and do it with a group, which it's just nothing but pure positivity so far. It also like really fleshes out the egregores in a way that you don't get when you do it just by yourself. Because like the root of the word egregore, it means group mind in Latin, I believe. I could be wrong about where it comes from, but it means group mind, right? So an egregore isn't really an egregore if one person's worked on it. You could be working with an archetype or a god form, but an egregore specifically is something usually shared between more than one person, right? And so these things gain real good coherence when there's a lot of people working with them for an extended period of time, right? So we have 3 god forms from the second wheel document that we've all been working on for like a fucking hot minute now. And they are as follows. I'll shout out the team that I'm on first, which is Bloom. She's basically like the grandmother elder archetype, who's also the village healer and the village elder. Like think about the compassionate healer who actually like knows all the herbs and like is practiced in medicine and a whole bunch of shit, right? And like there's been some really spooky occurrences we've found with like the egregore Bloom, her sigil that I made. It actually looks very suspiciously like an EKG machine, which or ECG, electrocardiograph, which is like a heartbeat monitor, you know, the beep 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 machines. But also her sigil greatly resembles the center part of this one egregore that we had a while ago called Lifeline. And Lifeline was meant to be another healing egregore. Like, do you remember like Ebola Chan way back in the day and all that bullshit?
Vaguely, yeah.
People made an egregore to Ebola and tried to empower it. Okay. So people in the Dikmu were like, no, fuck that, and deliberately made something to counter it called Lifeline, or Lifeline, however you say it. And the centerpiece of the Lifeline sigil looks suspiciously like the Bloom sigil, right? So it's cool to see how these egregores like spin themselves up naturally over time, right? Or like another one of them is Elilium, the broken bard, right? Like the person who couldn't necessarily climb the mountain of self perfection, but still has worth and value to contribute to the village intrinsically, and how pain and failure is not an end point, it's a gateway into something, and how you can use that and create something out of it that's positive for you and others, right? Lilium's a really cool archetype, and it's also really heavily tied into they're also really heavily tied into the Thame archetype, right? And then lastly, so there's the artists of Illilium, there's the Asclepians of Bloom, and then there's the aesthetics of Bloom, like I can't remember how to say it, but it's basically like the philosophy of depriving yourself of certain things, although that's not necessarily something I agreed with programming into Shikuzu from the get-go. And Prism said they were just looking for all A words, so it kind of fits. So it's not, don't treat the map like the territory on that one. But Shikuzu's essentially, like I said, the compassionate warrior who seeks not conflict, but seeks to train other people to be their best selves. He's not the dickhead master who removes himself from society and doesn't want to train people, but does so begrudgingly because they show up. He's the guy who like is happy to be approached and actually like help people grow and develop as they need, you know. So like he's a really fucking positive archetype, and he's like directly related to like the gym or like training, you know. So like it would be a really positive archetype for you to work with, I think. Yeah.
I've come to realize like I think what really pushed me down this path. I mean, I've been talking about my health for a long time, but what
Mm-hmm.
I've come to realize is that I'm making a lot of progress with my mental health. I'm making progress with my education.
Mm,
Um, and so it's kind of a mind, body, spirit kind of thing. I feel like there was a need for this sort of
the body part to
holistic
come in.
sort of, yeah, like, I have education and I constantly learn. Like right next to me I have my Kindle and a big book of New World Witchery by Corey Thomas
Mhm.
Hutcherson. Like I'm always learning
Oh,
something.
fantastic
So
book.
the mind is, I know, the mind
Yeah,
is cared
it's a great
for
book.
through therapy, so mind and education. And then we have body is now physical fitness and getting right with my how I treat food.
Mm,
Um,
mm-hmm.
and then spirit, of course, is sorcery and religion, and how I spirit work and whatnot. So I kind of I wanted to kind of complete this the circuit. I feel for me personally, I feel that they're integrated. These processes, they're not distinct. And I started thinking about this a lot recently, because me and my therapist are working on my binge eating disorder.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I never noticed how much of my weight was emotional, was how
Right.
much of it was trauma.
Mm,
There's so much trauma loaded into my weight. And I realized and I mean, I'm fine with working on that. Like, I am completely unafraid to go into the dark places. Like, that's another
right.
thing that um, I've learned to be is, oh, I don't want to say I'm unafraid. I should say that I don't
Brave.
care that I'm afraid. Huh?
Me,
Oh no,
me,
you're
and
courageous.
yeah,
Bravery is when you
Yeah.
do something difficult and you're not afraid at all, and courage is when you're afraid and you do something anyway.
Right.
I'm not
Yeah.
brave, I am courageous.
me and Rue kind of talked
Yeah.
about that
Like, I mean,
earlier.
it's heavy. It hurts. It doesn't always feel very good, but that's not the point of healing. You can't
Mm-hmm.
heal when it doesn't hurt. And
Yeah.
the fact that I can just do it, I'd rather, I'm at a point now where I'd rather lean into it. I'd rather
Mm-hmm.
say, I have a difficult time here. Let me address it. And that's in anything.
Because
Like,
fighting against it hasn't worked
it
for all
hasn't.
this.
It's
Yeah.
created this sort of stagnant, I don't know, just half a person,
Mm-hmm.
like half alive, not even maybe,
Right.
and I mean, and yeah, there are sacrifices that are made throughout this process.
Oh yeah.
There are things that I have to sort of prioritize over other things that I love, but I realize that for me to come out the other side of this in a way that I could do for others, the way others have done for me, this is what needs to be done.
Yeah.
Um, I'm where I need to be when I need to be. Like I haven't completely thrown aside everything, but yeah, a lot more attention goes into me. And it's not a selfish thing, it's not a mean thing. It's just I want to be able to one day kind of, I don't know, take an equal seat at the table, you know?
Mm,
And I realized that you can't have that when you're constantly falling apart
right.
all the time, you know? So really it's this sort of, it's so funny because there are so many people in the fitness industry who have a problem with this idea of like making your physical fitness holistic or spiritual in some way. And I'm like,
Yeah.
but to me this is sacrifice. To me this is like I could be giving this to a god, this is food for my spirits, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um so yeah, for me this whole thing is like a big, it's all connected. It's all one thing. I'm sorry to ramble.
No.
Rambling is
That
what
was
we do here. And I think that's why people listen to us. Like our ramblings.
yeah.
Um,
Rambling's mandatory. I'm mad if you don't ramble.
there is something that I wanted to mention to all of you. I've been kind of like picking the brains of other mages and occultists about this. So I got a text from Katie yesterday. And she's like, this is what she says. She says, "What does arc writing mean to you?" and I answered her, but I want to ask all of you this question. That was all she asked me. So, like, the term arc writing. When I say arc writing, ARC writing, arc writing, what do you think of? What
I don't
comes to
know.
mind?
Character arc?
Okay. What about you, Scott?
I don't know. I don't know what to arc writing.
Yeah.
I
That's
don't know.
interesting. That's really interesting. So what I responded to her was like when she said arc writing to me, my mind immediately went to like the arc subclass in Destiny, like lightning and right? That's where my mind went.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I think of electricity. I think of writing with electricity, writing with energy. I think of glowy, curvy writing, like white, blue, bright writing of some
Yeah.
kind. That's what I think of. And then I asked Rue. Rue gave a very similar response. Didn't see my response. Like I was just asking everyone the same question that she asked me. What do you think of when you think of arc writing? And we saw Lex and Vincent this morning, and I asked them the same thing, and they kind of had the same response, which I found very interesting. So I thought it was interesting with the two of you that, like, Sophia, you kind of went to character arc, like, and that when I looked up arc writing, like, I did a really quick Google search to see if anything would pop up. It was mostly about,
That's what
like,
I just did.
character arcs,
I
that kind of thing.
what I had thought of was not really, it wasn't a word that I would use, but like it was like it sounded to me like I was gonna say, and I hate using it because it gives me shivers, but like manifesting something, like that was kind of like
But I understand.
I hate it, and I was like, ugh. I know what I'm trying to say. It
Right.
reminded me of the reason I said it like that was because I have people who had this thing with they had this essentially an enchanted journal where they would sort of write in their journal as if things had already happened. They would write stories as a spell.
Mm.
Yeah, that's a type of spell, all right.
And it would bring about real change.
Interesting.
They would write stories intentionally about like in their life, like things that they wanted, and they would write their life in a story as if that thing that they wanted already happened.
I used
And then
to
that
do
thing would
this.
come.
That's a
And
really good form of spell work.
that's what I thought of.
That's interesting. And you know what? That could be it. Like, that could be what it was. So, essentially, what she was saying, she had a dream. And so, normally she doesn't remember dreams. But anyway, she had a dream. And then at some point in this dream, apparently I had owned this giant, like, apartment building kind of thing. To where, like, all of the witchy people lived there. Like, everyone that we kind of know. I even think maybe you lived there too, Sophia. I'm not really sure. I can't remember the details of the dream. But everyone, like, lived in their own little unit in this, like, big-ass building. And there's like communal areas where we could all like be sorcerers together and shit. Like it was real I basically I bought Hogwarts, I guess. I don't know, and made my own Hogwarts. But anyway, so that was the dream. And then apparently in the dream I had come to Katie and I was like all excited and I said I figured it out. I discovered arc writing. And she's like, what the fuck is that? And so I show her in this dream and I think it's like I turn all the lights out in the room or something, or we went into a room and there was this bluish white glowy like writing all over the walls in the dream, which is interesting that she said that because like when she was like, what does arc writing mean to you, I just thought of like glowy writing.
That's weird. I mean,
yeah So, and I just really thought that was cool. I was like, well, you having fucking prophetic dreams over here? What the fuck's going on? Like,
And so this man spent the rest of his life chasing the glow.
the one has Katie taken up practicing magic?
she has been doing more. Been doing some more things. Little things, just little like light a candle, devotional kind of things. It used to just be her like a lot of like reading stuff, watching videos and whatnot. But
yeah,
she's been doing more active magic.
I started noticing it picking up when Katie started liking more of my posts on Instagram.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, okay.
Katie's also enrolled in the gray school. I don't know how much she's gotten in studies too, but she's also in the gray school as well.
Really? That's cool.
Yeah, so I was like, I don't know how well you're gonna do, because I'm like, I know school isn't really like your thing, but it's a cool source, and it's a very like neutral, like, it's a neutral way to approach magic. Sort of like, it's just magic. It's
Yeah.
not tied to any tradition or god or anything like that. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting, and I thought, yeah, it was just really interesting thing.
That is
arc writing.
That's really
Yeah.
interesting. And for
So if
you to kind
anyone
of go there to almost have a shared unconscious
vision,
experience.
mm-hmm,
Yeah, that I think is really that's something.
mm-hmm,
That's when you know it's something. It's like if you've ever shared a dream with somebody. Like
yeah,
if you ever had an incident where
Mhm.
you dreamt something and the other person also dreamt it that same night, kind of thing.
mm-hmm, yes.
It's very similar because it happens in
Entangled.
the it
Like
happens in the unconscious plane.
Rue and my sister had a dream that my grandfather died, like basically the night before he died, essentially. So like my
Oh
sister had
shit.
a dream
Funny en-
that we were. Wait, was that you, Rue? Couldn't tell. Was that you?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I didn't want to overstep you. Sorry.
No, go ahead. You haven't really spoken that much. I wasn't sure.
No, no, you're fine. No, a lot of prophetic dreams has been a theme as of recently that I can chime in on because it's been happening a lot starting at the beginning of May. Both me and Jay's sister Laura shared the exact same dream that we were at the funeral for Grandpa, and for some reason it was like a Jewish funeral, like someone was sitting Shiva. Pronounce my words like a proper Jew, and they hang like portraits of the person who has passed and their family, and they're hung on a black tapestry, and there's like candles that underlight them, and that's how we could. I was like, why are we having a Jewish funeral for this man? But we knew it was for Grandpa, and everybody was dressed very, very nice. And everybody was there was some crying. I think there was crying from your mother, Jay. But and your sister chimed in on that too. But yeah, it was just, we had almost the exact same dream, and yeah, that was nuts.
My biggest takeaway from that dream is my grandfather's father is a man of mystery. We have no clue who the man is. Even like his older sister, no idea who, and his mother passed when he was very young. So he just really has no idea, who his actual dad is. And I was like, I found it interesting that both my sister and Rue dreamed that they were like at a Jewish like memorial service. And I was like, what if his father was Jewish? Like, what if he was actually like maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's like revealing his true like parentage or lineage or something. And as far as I know, the only beef I can trace back in family history was that there was a lot of beef between being Protestant and Catholic or something like that. So I'm like, I would assume that they wouldn't be very happy about someone, getting involved with a Jewish man or something like that. So maybe that's why it was all very hush hush, and whatnot. But I just found it very interesting. It was very, very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you have to remember too that like, and this is just everyone and everywhere. Family secrets are a thing, and that shit, especially in the older generations in particular, they
Tell me about it.
they went to their grave with a lot of weird shit, and like that's why like, I mean, this is lighter than some weird stuff, but
Yeah.
like a lot of people now, like when millennials and younger start doing like 23andMe and stuff, and they start finding out like strange family connections that shouldn't be the way that they are,
People find out they're adopted and like
yeah, like all sorts of weird
So,
shit. Like
this right here is something I feel like I need to talk about specifically because, like,
you have a very interesting
both sides of my family,
lineage.
lied to me. Not just
don't
were
you love
wrong
that?
about their shit, because they knew their shit. They fucking lied to me, okay? With the Métis thing, I had to learn from Dean Titchett when I was 25, and he's status Métis. And we were in the truck and he was pissed at a site super and he's like, "Yep, you can't trust those no good white devil motherfuckers for nothing, can you?" And I was like, "Damn, Dean, I can't really say shit because like I'm white." And he's like, "No, the fuck you're not." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Look at you, you're just as fucking dark as I am." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I guess I am, huh?"
Yeah, I'm
He's
pretty
like,
tan,
"Yeah,
huh?
Montaigne's a real fucking Métis last name." I'm like, "Yeah, I guess so, huh?"
You're like,
And like then I thought about it, and it's like when I was younger, we had a project in school, and we had to tell people what our family's background was,
Right.
right? So like I go to my mom, I'm like, "Hey mom, we need to know what our background is. What's your background?" She super easy, and she actually was not. My mom was like 90% correct when she said this. She's like, "We're basically German. We're Austrian, but that's going to confuse you. So just say German, and they'll understand." I'm like, "Cool."
Cool.
To her credit, yeah, she's like 80% Austrian. She's also a little Polish, and she's also Jewish on her dad's side because as you know, Judaism is matrilineal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it came through her father, so he was separated from it a while back, and he was just religiously Catholic, right? But like he's where I get my curly hair from. Like my dad does have a little curl to his hair, but I really get it from my grandpa Gottfried, right? His last name's fucking Gottfried, right?
Right.
Like, come on. Anyways, and then on my with the well, so yeah, my mom's side's Jewish, even though they didn't even know that, and he just like was quiet about it. And like when I asked my dad, "So what's your background?" He's like, "Canadian." I'm like, "What do you mean Canadian?" He's like,
Okay. Like,
"Well,
what's
we're
that
Canadian."
mean?
I'm like, "Well, what's that mean? Like,
Yeah.
where do you come from?" He's like, "You come from a long line of Canadians. We've been in Canada for as long as could be," sort of thing. I'm like,
So he was like being
"Okay,
cryptic,
so I'm
but
not a
like not
kid."
cryptic.
He was being super cryptic because he
Yeah.
fucking knew plenty. And even at
Yeah.
one point, he tried to tell us like, "Hey, actually, I think I'm pretty sure certain we're like mixed native." But then I was like, "What?" And he immediately backpedaled. He's like, "Forget I said anything. I shouldn't have said that." I'm like, what do you don't do this to me, Dad. What are you
How
saying,
dare
right?"
you?
And then like, sure as shit, like if I pull up a video of a Métis elder speaking on YouTube, it's the exact same accent that my grandpa has. And when I saw that, I fucking started crying because it was like listening to a video of my grandpa talk.
Right.
And I sent it to April. And the kicker, she's like, "I don't mean to spook you, but that's actually grandpa's neighbor. We know these people." And
Oh
I'm like,
shit. Oh damn.
it's so consistent, you know what I mean? It's just like y'all have just been like lying to us to our fucking faces, sort of thing. Um, so yeah, it's really funny because a lot of times families who come from like a background that isn't necessarily the most socially advantageous, if they can try to accrue some level of whiteness and step away from it, they do, and it fucking sucks because it's damaging to people who actually want to know where they come from and partake in their traditional cultures rather than just being this fucking weird white hegemonic bullshit that nobody's happy with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like, if
Very
you're white,
true.
you're white, you're white, right? But ain't nobody need to be fucking white hegemonic. Like, fuck.
It's like with me, like I'm Scottish, Irish, and like German, like some sort of German, background. So those are like my big three things. I'm basically like it's mostly Scottish, Irish, and then like German comes in kind of third. Where it all kind of comes
My
from.
dad's actually also Irish. I forgot to mention his mom's Irish, and she said she was English, even though her last name is fucking O'Day. Like, come on.
Right. And
Fuck off.
yeah, and we've been watching Vikings. I finally got Rue to watch Vikings on Hulu. And
Especially
so
on the hype train.
yeah, you're late, but you're here. That's all that matters.
Uh,
So we've been
it's
watching Vikings, which is based off of the myths of the sons of Ragnar Lothbrok. And of course it's a fiction show, so they take a lot of liberties with the show, but it's fun to watch. So we've been watching a lot of Vikings, and like it's sort of like I feel bad sometimes because like me as a white person, so like being a person of Germanic descent, it's not a lot, but it's like my top, it's a third of my top 3. I feel like, I do have it's appropriate for me to, work with Nordic gods, right? To work with that Norse pantheon,
Yeah.
right? Because they're of Germanic origin. I'm also of Irish Scottish descent, so it is appropriate for me to work with Celtic deities. And of course, for anyone who is not aware, like Celtic, it describes a mishmash of different peoples in that region. It does not mean they all worshipped the same
Oh, yeah.
gods. It's a
Or
lot of
viewed
this
things the
is
same or spoke the same.
yes, and
It's the
also
same thing as
bearing
American Indigenous people.
Exactly.
and also bearing in mind like a lot of the written material that we have about the Celts and all of that, and even with Nordic gods, a lot of that were written after Christianity had begun to take hold, or kind of
Mhm.
had taken hold, and so they were rewritten in this sort of Christian guise or whatever, or some of them were more
Romanticized. Some of
yeah,
them is also
exactly,
romanticized.
or sometimes more scholarly,
Also, I
depending how.
maintain that the only good Christmas song is Greensleeves because it's not actually a Christmas song, and I will not budge on this.
You know what
I love
Christmas
green
song?
sleeves.
I don't think I'm familiar with that song, actually. I'm gonna have to look that
You
up.
absolutely know it. It's bum 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 ba-dum bum ba-dum 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 ba-da-da-da-da-da.
I'm gonna have to look it up because I don't recognize the tune.
It's
That's weird.
often known, What Child Is This is the Christianized version.
Ah,
Yes.
okay. I'm really not familiar with that one either. The Christmas song that always gets me is fucking "Oh Holy Night." Just objectively, I think it's a beautiful song. There you go, I said it.
That's fine.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just think it's a really pretty song. It's very powerful, if you can. Because I
It
mean, you could be
is,
singing about
if you
anything.
like.
Are you
you know.
ex-Catholic, Jay? I can't remember if you are or not.
Oh,
Like kind of like pseudo Catholic. Like I never went to Catholic
Christian.
school. They sent me to like CCD
Mhm.
classes and I stopped taking them at like 8 years old. So not really. It's so funny. I
Okay.
did find out, speaking of like family secrets and stuff, when I was going through my grandfather's house, I was finding a lot of like religious things, which I found interesting because my family is not particularly religious. And I have this like statue of like like baby Jesus holding the globe or whatever. And a lot of this I found out, and there's like he had like a lot of rosaries and stuff. I think it was just rosaries from like funerals and things from places he went to, but like he just kept a lot of these things. And my dad was saying a lot of
Older generations were just like cursory Christian just by like association, even if they weren't like
yes.
super religious about it,
Yes, because my dad, he literally fucking confirmed, like, because I asked him, I was like, Grandma had like the St. Christopher's necklace that she wore. She's got all this Jesus stuff. Because he was saying that most of the religious things that my grandfather had down at his place were my grandmother's stuff. Like a lot of them were hers. And I was like, what was the deal? Like, was she deeply religious? She has a lot of this stuff. And he's like, no, she believed in God just in case. And I was like, I fucking lost
that's
my
most older
fucking shit.
generations for real.
And
They
if
they have
you,
like a little safety crucifix.
yeah, he was like, she'd throw out a prayer just in
Can't go
case.
to hell. Dear God, here, I did some prayer and I ate some bread. Don't send me to hell. Thanks, bye.
Right, like trying to stay in your good graces. Like,
Don't
I
fuck me
hope,
over, you vengeful prick.
right, like I hope it worked out for you wherever you both are now. I hope it worked out. Praying to God just in case. And I'm like, if that doesn't describe my family's view on religion, I don't know what does. Believing in God just
that's
in
a
case.
lot of that's a lot of lower class people in
Yeah.
like North America. I really don't think a lot of people like if you're really Christian, everybody fucking knows it because you're
Right.
proselytizing, right?
Yeah, that's kind
But
of your
like
job.
most motherfuckers are happy to like say a hallelujah, go to church on fucking Christmas Eve and call it,
Yes. Exactly.
It's so
Exactly.
it's so interesting to hear both of your experience, like especially growing up, essentially like in the Italian diaspora, and and how strong the religious connotation was, but it was odd because it was so quiet. Like it was present, ever present, but so not other people's problem. It wasn't like it wasn't about other people.
Right.
Well,
it was so no, it was it was it was like hanging apotropaic Catholic charms on doorways and blessing your bed before you fell asleep kind of thing. It was magical in a lot of ways for me. Oh, sorry, I had to move my leg.
To be clear, I actually had an extremely traditionally Catholic upbringing because, like, I did communion and Eucharist, and I can still sing fucking Catholic hymns. That was just my experience with other people who were outside the faith. Like, I was so Catholic, I proselytized when I was a child.
I am so distracted by the Kick dashboard to the left of my site. We have 8 viewers right now. That is more than we've ever had on Twitch.
Holy shit.
And it just
I'm
dropped down
one
to
of them.
5. I know you're one of them because I saw that you followed
They're
the
like,
channel.
don't acknowledge us!
So there was
Shut
2.
the fuck up about us!
I think 2 are like some sort of like viewer bots that Kick has.
Maybe.
And then I saw a 3rd, so I know that Rue is the 3rd. So then there was 5. So there's 2 others out there, and Christella, who is now Christar on Kick. So Christella from Discord is here. Hello. And then it jumped to 8 for a second, and then it jumped back down to 5. So for those 3 people, hi, hello. Sorry, I don't know.
The public page still says 8.
Oh, it still says 8? Yeah, the dash keeps flipping between 5 and 8. So for anyone who is here, welcome. I
We're not having people.
Yeah, unfortunately, you've caught us toward of like the end of our recording session. We usually record for about an hour, hour and a half. So we are kind of wrapping things up in a little bit, but I am very, very shocked to see those numbers on this
and thank you
on this platform. Yes, and thank you so much for stopping by.
That's,
Whether you're just people from our Discord
and
or
that's
just randos.
podcasting.
Yeah.
You scream into the void for so long, and then you get nothing, and you get used to having nothing, and then all of a sudden something happens, and you're like, "What the fuck? What's going on?"
Yeah, that's kind of how we started the podcast to begin with.
Doing enough magic and manifesting, I would hope so.
Oh, let's not use the M word.
I know. I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry I did that. I feel like that's my fault.
No, Scott. I hate the word manifest as well. And it's because Loki, it's used by a lot of people who don't actually understand magic. And like, that's fine. You don't actually have to understand magic to practice it. Like, we don't need the ivory tower in witchcraft. Sorry, not sorry. But at the same time, there's a lot of people who act like they're better because they don't know theory, and I don't know where that comes from for some reason. Like, I like, homie, knowing the theory behind how the physics of your car works and understanding center of gravity lets you drive better. You can intrinsically understand it, but if you intrinsically understand it and understand the fucking like physics behind it, you're gonna have a better time, right? Like,
right. I don't know why.
I never understood that.
When you mentioned theory, I thought of this really hilarious queer skit where it's like a bunch of queer people at a party, and the one friend goes, "Bitch, you don't read theory. You don't read theory." Like talking about queer theory because like they're talking about like queer rights, and she's like, "Bitch, you don't read theory." And
Is this Carlos Mesa?
I don't know. I don't remember who it was,
Okay.
but it was funny. I'll have to find the skit for you. It was.
He's a queer YouTuber from Toronto who makes really good content.
It was funny.
Yeah. But like, for real, you don't necessarily need to know theory to practice magic. I'm not an elitist. I don't even think that you need to have like a really defined practice to say that you're a practitioner, right? Like, if somebody says to me, "Oh, I'm a witch," and I say, "Oh yeah, what do you do?" and they say, "Oh, I'm just at the stage right now where I'm reading stuff," I'm never gonna be like, "Oh, you're not a witch." You know what my answer is gonna be? "Cool. Who are you reading?"
Right. Like,
Like-
right, like when Matt Oren says manifestation in his book, I trust it because I know he knows what
Right.
he's talking about.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's really like, and obviously, like, Rue, you're fine. We're not talking about you,
Yeah.
Avi.
There's just a lot of
I
new
feel
age people
it
who
felt
use
dirty
the
coming
word.
out of my mouth. I realized, you know how I do. I talk before I think. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I didn't want you to think this is like us, like
I also-
coming at you.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I think that that's another key thing to note is how much like language around terminology denotes one's practice. You know,
Mm-hmm.
because like
That's
a
very
lot of
true.
people will specifically veer towards certain terms and have certain connotations with other terms. Like I've used things as generalized terms, like say left-hand path, and I've had practitioners take great offense to it and treat me like I was like trying to pigeonhole them rather than use like a loose descriptor that people had a placeholder for. You know what I mean?
And that is why this podcast exists.
Like-
and that is why the community that we're building exists, because it is meant to be a bridge between all of that bullshittery in the occult communities. Because we all practice a different flavor of magic here. Like even me and Rue, even though like I introduced Rue to a lot of magic, and our magic is still different. Like their magic is not like mine. And
Yep.
that's important. And I know, like with you and Darian, Scott, like I know your magics are very different from each other.
Yeah, the only time me and Darian's magic intersects at all is when he's talking about dragons. Darian likes to learn from an animist perspective about how I perceive dragons. And, you know, for me, I say, well, dragons are spirits in the land. They're gods in the land. They're in the rock face. You know, that's how I perceive them. Sleeping primordial powers that you can work with and access. And he very much likes that. You know, this idea of archetypal forces that appear as dragon. You know? And of course, oftentimes it's very European, the kind of magic that surrounds that, right? So that tends to be my bread and butter. And yeah, so that's where, but otherwise his comedicism I have nothing to do with. Like,
right, I know that's really not your wheelhouse at all.
You're
although
like, how
I am
is
getting,
Kepri doing there? And they'll be like, I'm not even working with Kepri, and you're like, fuck. You know.
I will say though, I am starting to because I want to start delving more into like the Italian side of like, you know, like kind of move, like I'll always have my Italian folk Catholicism, but there was always a lot more to that, and I kind of want to start going more pre-Christian and start working more with like, you know, Hellenic deities.
I've been kind
you know,
of
Diana and stuff.
For me,
Diana particularly.
For me, I thought that I really wanted to delve more into like Celtic and Norse kind of stuff because I'm like, oh, that's my origin, you know, like that's where my people come from, my ancestors and whatnot. But ever since I picked up this little tiny grimoire, I think it was published through that DKMU current, the Hexorian grimoire. I think it's called the OP grimoire of Hexorian magic. That shit is my jam. I'm an urban person.
We almost had to disassociate from the Hexorians for a little bit because they were getting infiltrated by fascists and they were having trouble listening when we were trying to explain to them. And like, so just as a heads up, if anybody sees like any Black Sun, Sonnenrad or like Valkund imagery in the memes from them, that has since been rectified. They didn't realize they were being infiltrating. The people who were pushing that imagery had been dealt with and removed. But just be aware they're not necessarily advocating for white supremacy, but white supremacists love to come in and try and co-opt movements, and they weren't necessarily as aware of that ahead of time. And that's why in the occult community we have to be very, very, very actively anti-fascist. It is not enough to simply not be racist. We have to be anti-racist.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
But I think I've kind of just been aligning myself more with the idea of like urban sorcery, you know, really like with the weeds that grow in the cracks in the sidewalk. Like that's just always been me. That's how I found my magic. That's how I found nature. That's how I find deity and land spirits. Land spirits exist within the cracks of the sidewalk, just as they exist in giant open
Absolutely.
meadows.
Yep.
And I think we don't pay enough
Mhm.
attention to them. And just the fact that like City Hall itself has like several dozen gargoyles on it that all represent different things. Like
Oh, and the god that lives under the whole building and it
right,
suffuses the entire thing.
and just like everything
It's
about
Philadelphia people.
Philadelphia in particular, and its huge Masonic influence, you know. But
Yeah.
there's just a lot. But I think I really want to focus on urban sorcery. That's kind of been my focus. So I thought that I wanted to go back and like look into the history of my people and the Celts and Norse, and I'm like, I've read a lot about that. I really have. Like, I know a lot about those gods. I know a lot about, you know, their stories and stuff. I'm actually reading Neil Gaiman's Norse mythology right now. We picked that up from the library.
Sick.
That's been a fun read.
Neil Gaiman's good shit.
Mhm. Thor is very
Mhm.
dumb. Thor's not very smart. I don't want to ruin it too much for Rue, who hasn't read it yet. Thor's not very smart though. But it's a good read, and I'm like, you know what? I like these gods. They're cool, but I don't know if I necessarily connect with them. You know,
Mhm.
I think I connect more with gods of the new world. You know, gods of the world that exist now. You know, the
Yeah.
techno age that we're in. And I guess that really kind of falls within the DKMU current, and that's where I've been comfortable, and that's where I've been like enjoying exploring a lot. But yeah,
Yeah, to be honest, that's what I like about the egregores is they're very deliberately crafted archetypes that you can interface with, and it'll have a positive result rather than just like giving you some bullshit.
I actually I don't know if I should mention this on air or not, but it's kind of fun. So something that I do want to do, Sophia, and I do want to connect with you, you know, off air or offline or whatever, is I want to talk to members of the DKMU. I want to write mythology about
Hmm.
those
The
gods and those
egregores.
egregores, like in a
Oh hell
story
yeah, people will be excited.
format. Like I want to
Um,
talk about like that first working, you know, with Ellis, like how she came to be, like the Chelsea working. You know, like I want to
may I recommend
build that up.
going to the Discord and joining the Wizard Moot
The Wizard
under
Moot.
the team Illilium,
Okay.
because that's the thing I was talking about, where we all align with one of the three egregores for a period of time.
Mm.
Illilium is about storytelling and performance and all of those wonderful things. So they would be right on your alley right there. And I think Rue would really like them because they're also a non-binary performer archetype. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna definitely check out the Wizard's Moot and see what that's about, because I think mythic sort of storytelling is my jam, because I was reading like old things that I used to write, and I don't write very specific. I like big metaphors, and I like things to be broad, and I like people to get multiple meanings from what is kind of being written. And reading Neil Gaiman's Norse mythology, I'm like, wow, he really did a good job taking these stories, these old stories, and like spinning them into very simple modern language. And the storytelling is just really good, and I was really inspired by that. And also, I picked up a book called Songs of the Metamythos, which is written by that Christian Cooper guy who does the bird watching show on National Geographic. He's
Yes,
also a
he is an occultist. I didn't
yes,
know if anyone. I forgot all about that. I did like
yeah,
a whole deep dive on that, and I was
yeah,
so impressed. I was like, "That's so awesome!"
yeah. He's an occultist, and so I picked up his book, Songs of the Metamythos, and it's very like, I haven't started it yet, but it's that mythic storytelling. You know, his characters are cosmos and night and light and dark and death, and you know, these are the characters that he's working with, and I really think that's my jam, because I kind of just want to write stories for. It's not that I want to write scripture, but like maybe I do want to write scripture, like when I want to write gospel. I don't know. I'm all over the place, but
I have to skedoodle because I have to use the bathroom really bad. Everybody.
yes, we're gonna head out of here, Scott. We're gonna wrap
Scott.
things up in a couple minutes. We will see you next week, Scott.
I will see you. I love
You want
everybody.
anything?
Thank
Love
you
you.
for our
I'll
viewers.
tag you on the
love you.
channel for. I'll tag you on that channel I was talking about. Take care.
I'll see you. Yes, tell me. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye. But yeah, we're at like an hour and 35 minutes. Look, I didn't say a minute and 35 seconds or whatever the hell I usually say. Yeah. The first 10 or 11 minutes of this, my mic is totally muted, so that's gonna piss me off when I get to the editing phase of this, but whatever. But thank you to the 2 other people that I know are here watching, because I know 2 are bots, 1 is Rue, and 1 is for Stella, so there's 1 other person watching that I'm not quite aware of who that is. But hello, and thank you for hanging out.
Thank you.
And we'll be back next Sunday around like 2 p.m. A couple of things I want to plug. We do have a Discord community. There's some links on our page. We also have a Ko-fi page. The Hail Satan tier is pretty cool because you get to give like an announcement. You could advertise your shop. You could advertise a Pagan Pride event, or maybe you're running a workshop. Whatever it is, you want to boost it, shout it out. Throw 666 at the Hail Satan tier, and we can make that happen for you. And we also do have our own little merch kind of shop, which all of those links are in the bottom there on our Kick page. So with that, I guess we are going to sign out, and we will see you all next Sunday. Ready?
Bye, nerds.
Bye, everybody.